is bleeding right now from a tooth that's rotted away and broke off. And I was at the, whatever it is, grill, where Michael Jordan eats, whatever it's called downtown. I wanted to go where Michael Jordan eats because I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. Something grilled downtown. And I bit into a piece of bread and my whole molar came out except for this really sharp point that's against my tongue. This is 20 years ago I wrote this song. And that, when I wrote that song, I really think a lot about songs and what they mean, and making this record's made me look back at songs and think like, wow, that was interesting. That there's one called Body and Soul that that I don't know how to play it because it's all like, but when we were recording it, because Xander, this great musician, played guitar on the record, and when I was singing it, like, I'm way different than the person who wrote that song. And I remember thinking like that, and I remember the house that I lived in, I remembered the pizza company that used to come by and deliver food. I drive by that house all the time, and a lot of times, because I was pretty successful as a musician like the late 80s, early 90s, and whenever I'm driving by there, I go, you see that big pink house, that salmon-colored house? And it's like up in the Hollywood Hills, right by the freeway, and I go, I used to own that house. Like, I'm so still falsely prideful, like, and I shot it up and got it impounded or whatever they do to houses. It got taken away from me, however, that, like, got the boot on the house, and the thing that happens with drugs and music and income and all this kind of stuff. It's some really funny stuff that happened to me and my friends. When so they said that I had made my house payment and I had to move out. Now, they come and talk to you and paperwork, and they leave a lot of letters. And if you're on drugs, you're just like, I'll deal with it tomorrow, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And then finally the sheriff comes, just like if you're getting evicted from an apartment. And they don't really come in or knock, they just post this thing that the house has been taken back by the bank. And I remember opening the door and looking at it, and I was like, God, they didn't even do anything. And so I just stayed there, and I stayed there another 6 weeks. Like, they just came and posted, said, you don't own this house anymore? But then I just lived there, nobody did anything. And I kept thinking, like, this might just roll. And so John Frusciante went through the same thing, and he lived with me when he got sober, and the IRS was taking his royalty checks, right? And he was so bummed out about it. He's very kind of innocent to begin with. But so he's talking to me one day, and he goes, do you think it's fair that, like, I made millions of dollars and the government took, like, half of it all the time, and now I don't make anything, and now they take everything? And I was like, I get where you're coming from. but yeah, it's a racket. It's like the mafia. And it was considerable amount of money, but sometimes checks would slip through, because he would always go to the mailbox, and somehow, like, some $3,600 check that the IRS didn't know about coming from this other source would come. But he didn't have an ID, and so he came up with this thing that it's the Chili Pepper check, and so he would go to the check cashing place with Chili Pepper's albums and say, that's me, I was this guy, and this is my check, is that good enough? And they would cash his checks. It was the funniest thing. And I'd be like, John, you should just go to the DMV and get an ID. And he's like, will you go with me? And I was like, yeah, we can just go down there and we'll wait. And then we'd go to the DMV, went get a passport. And I remember him, like, reacquainting with life. Like, yeah, you just go and sign some papers and pay $50 and you get a passport. And that kind of coming up out of the darkness of addiction, to watch people do that just every couple months, most of my life, is so fascinating. It's not like warm, like all the do-gooder self-helpers say. It's just fascinating to see somebody become reacclimated with how to live, right? Just going to a grocery store sometimes, like with people, like they haven't been in a grocery store for years, because nowadays kids go to rehab when they're like 16 or 17 and they never leave. It's like they just go to rehab, then they go to sober living, then they relapse, and then they go back to another rehab, and then they go out of state to another rehab, and then they come back to LA, and then they relapse, and then a lot of those people, right?
Yeah.
And it's been 5 or 6 or 7 years since they've really been themselves, and they've lived in these kind of either like structured environments where they have no say. And I had this client a couple years ago, and the sober living was calling saying, she's a fucking slob and you got to do something, you're the case manager of this. And I would talk to her at sessions and be like, what is the deal over there? They're always saying, you're in trouble with them, or what? You got to straighten that out. You're trying to be adult, like, dude, you got to deal with this. They're always calling me saying you're a slob or whatever. And I guess she had never washed her clothes, and it was just all piled in her room, and their roommates complaining, and she had enough money that she would just buy new clothes and then just keep the dirty ones on the floor, throw them in the closet, and they were piling up, and she, pretty well-to-do family. So I was like, what the fuck is this deal? Like, why don't you wash your clothes and put them in drawers? Because she was going to get kicked out over it. And she goes, and it was one of the purest moments I've ever seen, and most people will have contempt for it. She goes, I don't know how a washing machine works. And I was like, what? And she's like, I know it sounds stupid. I don't know what you're supposed to turn it on. I don't know, I've watched the lady at our house that does it, and I've tried, and I just, all the kids are so vicious in there. She didn't want to go in the laundry room and just to ask, like, how does this work? because she's lived a life of entitlement where maids do your laundry for you, and then she's been in rehab most of her adult life. I mean, all of her adult life. And